Hey, welcome to the show today. It's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. And as I say each week, Fresno, California is the heart of the Central Valley, and the Central Valley is the heart of California. So we got a lot of heart going on here today, and it's another great day, and it's a day that we claimed greatness before we even opened our eyes, I hope, for each and every one of you. You know, life itself is a gift, and every day is a gift to us. And our gift to give back to the Creator, that which gives us all this great gift, is to live our life and to live it as abundantly as we can each and every day with the most energy, the most love, the most health, peace, and harmony in our life. And when we do that, great things happen. And so I'm glad you're with us today because we're going to talk about great things happening in our life. First, I want to read a couple little things from some various books. This book is kind of old, but it's called What Science of Mind Teaches. And I just want to read a quote out of here. And Ernest Holmes says, religious science teaches that God is personal and personal in a unique way to everyone. So as we go through the show today, and we're going to talk about God, we're going to talk about love, we're going to talk about guidance in our life, and our day-to-day life experience. Think about this. God is personal to each and every one of us. You know, it's so easy sometimes to think that we're alone, but we're never alone. That there is the divine that exists within each and every one of us, and we can tap into it. We can make that connection, and we can experience it as it demonstrates in our life. I say often, and the quote's not original to me, it's Reverend Johnny Coleman, that we have a bigger God than any problem that can arise in our life, but we got a bigger God than any challenge. And challenges are not always negative. There's oftentimes positive. We have a bigger God than anything that we have to struggle through. And knowing that we have a bigger God works for us as we know that it works for us. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that. I want to go to the Science of Mind book itself, and this is to be found on page 498. And it is Ask in Faith, Believing. And Ernest Holmes writes, if we lack wisdom, we are to come to the source of all knowledge, and we shall receive it. If we lack wisdom, we're to come to the source of all knowledge, and we shall receive it. But how are we to ask, he says? We ask in faith, believing. The master teacher once said that it's done unto us as we believe. He also said that when we pray believing, our Father, creative source, principle, first cause, will answer. It always answers, and in truth answered before we ever spoke those words. We need to understand how that works in our life. Because when we do understand that we have such a powerful influence on the life that we live either through ignorance or through choice, when we understand that we have an incredible power, and the power really does lie in this word that we call choice, and we'll talk a little bit about that today too. But I want to go now, this is a book called Living the Science of Mind. And on page 411, Dr. Holmes wrote an essay called The Principle of Divine Guidance. The Principle of Divine Guidance. You know, as we often close, we talk about being divinely guided and divinely guarded throughout, as we go through our day-to-day life experience. I talk about when we awaken in the morning that we claim the day, the greatness, the goodness, and the godness of each and every day. Just speaking those words, though, it doesn't really do a lot for us unless we understand in an embodied sort of way what it is that we're speaking. Because as we speak those words, what we're really doing is opening ourselves up to this concept of divine guidance, to be divinely guided throughout the day. So let's read what Dr. Holmes says. He says, nothing is more important than the realization that since we are surrounded by infinite intelligence, we are immersed in limitless wisdom. Emerson tells us that the human history is the working of the infinite mind on this planet. That's a pretty big chunk to bite into, maybe. But think about it. we're immersed. We talk about, and we've talked about in the past, the idea that in the beginning, God, and nothing else. So all that we experience today is what God has created. But you see, God becomes the thing that it creates. God creates out of God itself. That's kind of an interesting idea, isn't it? But if we go back again to the words of wisdom that tell us, in the beginning there was God, and nothing else. And we go a little bit further into that, and it says he created heaven and earth. Heaven, we understand, is the spiritual aspect of all of creation. Earth is not the physical aspect, but the earth, as it's described at this point, Trower tells us this is the primordial spiritual substance from which reality, materiality, comes from. So, as God creates the heaven and the earth, and God said, "Let there be light." But this isn't the light that we think of when we think of like the sun or stars or flashlights or lights in our house. This is a different light. This is that inner spiritual light that lives within each and every one of us. The idea that God lives in each and every one of us and expresses as life through each and every one of us. When Holmes says that there's nothing more important than the realization that we are surrounded by infinite intelligence and we are immersed in limitless wisdom. If we're immersed in limitless wisdom and we're having some issues getting through life, and a lot of us are, right? How can we make that connection? How do we tap into that, if you will? In today's life, you may say, how can I get online with this infinite wisdom? And that's part of our spiritual journey, part of our spiritual path, is one, realizing that it's there, two, realizing that divine principle, first cause, expresses as us, through us, and that we're immersed in it, and is available to us. And when Jesus walked the face of the earth and he said, "It's done unto you as you believe," this is what he's talking about. If you believe that you can make that connection to the infinite guidance, that you can call on it, that it will express in your life, then you have a pretty good expectation to see it happen, and it will demonstrate, providing that we align with principle in ways that we've talked about in past shows. So we go on here, he says, "We are of necessity inlets of the divine mind, but since we are individuals, we become outlets only to the degree that we permit ourselves to become." We are inlets. God is giving the gift always. God doesn't shut down. God doesn't go on vacation. God doesn't take Sundays off. 24/7, if you will. The divine principle, God is always with us. Always with us. But we got to tap into it. We have to tap into it. It is there. It provides for us, but only to the degree that we believe, to the degree that we recognize, the degree that we tap into it. So he goes on to say here, we are surrounded by divine wisdom, love, intelligence, and still lack divine guidance. And doesn't that explain our life story so often that, as we've gone through life, it's like we made all the wrong decisions at the very worst time, it seems like sometimes. Oftentimes we let that become part of our story. And if we do, our story will hold us back. We can't create new when we're tied to the old. There's a quotation from Carl Jung that goes something to the effect that, "I am not my past. I am what I choose to be today." And in the realization of that, we are what we choose to be today. And we are when we recognize and understand and believe that we are surrounded by the divine, that we are surrounded and immersed within the divine, and that it expresses through us, that there's divine intelligence, this divine wisdom, on an infinite level, if you will, is available to us to the degree that we believe it, to the degree that we open ourselves up to it, to the degree that we allow it to express through us. And that, again, like I say, that's part of our spiritual journey. And it's an awesome part of our spiritual journey. But it's a part that we don't express in our life until we come to the point where we realize that, one, it's available, and two, that we have the power to do something about it, and three, we begin to exercise that power. Knowing things without taking action upon our knowingness is basically, as I believe it was said in James, faith without deeds is dead. Faith without action is dead. Knowing without action, Ernest Holmes said, we treat and we move our feet. Action becomes important. On one level, understand that what action is, it's a confirmation to ourselves that we believe what we say we believe. So, excuse me. So we go forward here, and he says, God forever made and forever delivered his gift, but that we each lack this perception, that we lack the perception of this guidance and its operation through us. And we do. We get caught up in, and we grew up in the material world, and we've been told about limitation. We've been told that there's not going to be enough of any particular thing, food, water, whatever. We've been told that there's maybe not enough money in the bank when we have bills or whatever. But that's not true. What we've been told is to believe and to live in a reality of limitation. So we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this reality of limitation. I'll see you then.
Chef Big Will presents the original Bonton Cafe. Stop by 7307 Highway 49 North in Mariposa for the best blackened or southern fried catfish. Go and eat good food and sweet drinks, including but not limited to Cajun and Creole, smoking barbecue, hush puppies, fried pickles, alligator tail, etouffee, prime rib, tri-tip, po' boy sandwiches, crawfish, oysters, fried okra, and so much more. Daily lunch and dinner specials. Sunday brunch from 10 to 2. Enjoy the taste of New Orleans at the original Bonton Cafe. And see their full menu at theoriginalbontoncafe.com. Get your copy of Crouching Mama Hidden Veggies today, packed with recipes of delicious food cooked with hidden vegetables, so you can feel confident that you and your family are eating your veggies.
Contact Sprague Electric for all things electrical, solar installations, battery systems, troubleshooting, repairs, and more. Call 559-760-0712. SpragueElectric.com.
Sunday, December 16th at 3:30 p.m., Voices United Chorus presents Sounds of the Seasons, a celebration in song with the Chordsmen and Gold Note Chorus. Dessert, auction, and gift drawings. Tickets will be $10 for individuals and $20 for the family. This is a great opportunity to come out and celebrate the season. Sunday, December 16th at 3:30 p.m. This is hosted by People's Church, 7172 North Cedar in Fresno. Hope to see you there.
Are you or a member of your family beginning to show early signs of forgetfulness that may be Alzheimer's or dementia? The only way to be sure is through an expensive brain scan. Dr. Parminder Bhatia of the Neuropain Medical Center is helping in a clinical trial for those with memory problems, dementia, or mild Alzheimer's disease. Those accepted into the trial will have all costs paid for, from diagnosis to evaluations and trial medicine. There is no cost for those who are accepted in the trial, and there may even be some compensation for the patient's time and travel. For more information, call 559-437-9700, extension 310, and visit neuropain.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Returning back to the Science of Mind textbook, again on page 498, we read, God can give us only what we take, and since the taking is a mental act, we can take only what we believe in. That's where we got to start. It starts with our belief. Again, falling back on the teaching, it's done unto us as we believe. So as we move forward, we talk about, Holmes in this essay talks about principles of themselves do nothing. And they do nothing in particular for the individual until they are specialized, until they are used. In other words, it's one of the easiest ways to kind of realize this is some of the principles of physics that are involved with flight. Until man realized what these principles were and then put them into practice, everybody was pretty much, nailed to the ground, so to speak, until someone realized that we could put these principles into practice in a way that would allow us to have flight. And we see where that's led us to. But that same concept exists within each and every one of us. There's a principle of God, if you will, that's everywhere present. And when we begin to understand that surrounds us and that we can access that, and it's done unto us at the level of our belief, we begin to open up new doors for our life experience. And so, again, principles of themselves do nothing in particular for the individual until they are specialized or used. He says we are surrounded by a principle of mind and intelligence, which will become divine guidance to us, provided we permit it to do so. Our part is to realize that divine guidance is a principle. Got it? And so to accept this principle as operating in our everyday life. In other words, we're surrounded by intelligence. Divine guidance is a principle that is available to us, and we can access it and utilize it to the degree that we believe it, that we understand it, that we utilize it and we use it. And as we do, it unfolds. We've all experienced those things in our life, those moments when, that little voice, if you will, in the back of your head says, do this or don't do that. And if you do something or don't do something, wonderful things unfold for you. Or maybe, you were saved from making a terrible mistake. How do you think that came to you? Where do you think that came from? That little voice that exists within us is not just a matter of nerve connections in this thing we call our brain, that there's more to us, that we are, one, that we are living beings, and two, that we are spiritual beings, and three, that we are connected to a source of an infinite good, an infinite love, an infinite abundance. It's why when we make that declaration in the morning as we start our day, before we open our eyes and we thank the divine, we thank God, however you understand for you what the divine principle is. And you can call it God, or you can call it Yahweh, you can call it Allah. It doesn't make any difference. But in those moments, in that early morning moment when you're just greeting the day and you give thanks, think about how that feels, and then experience it in the morning when you do it. And I can tell you, when you make a habit of doing this and you begin to really realize what's happening in that moment, the incredible feeling that comes over one when we do that. And then after we give thanks, then we make that declaration that today is a great day. And we can say that regardless of what's on our to-do list, regardless of what the things are that we know we're going to have to face. Maybe there are challenges, maybe there are issues, if you will. But in that moment in the morning when we first get started and we make that declaration, we can know that we have a bigger God, a greater good than anything the day is going to bring at us if it happens to be a challenge. And if it's something that's going to promote our life, to accelerate our life experience, we know that it's highly energized from this thing called love, divine love. And that's what God is. And so I want to take a moment, I want to go back to the textbook again, because I'd like to read you how Ernest Holmes speaks of love. And he says, love is the self-givingness of spirit through the definite, or the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. Think about this. Love is the self-givingness of spirit, of God, through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. He says, Emerson tells us that love is a synonym for God. We also are told that in the New Testament that he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Love is free from condemnation, even as it is free from fear. Love is a cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible. I love that. No pun intended. Love is a cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible. In other words, when we tie into that, when we hook into that, if you will, log into it, however you want to express that for you, that it's such an overwhelming and empowering feeling. And within that lies the seeds of divine guidance. You know, when we seek to see the world through the eyes of love, we're seeking to see the world through the eyes of the divine, through the eyes of God. Or, in other words, allowing God to see the world through our eyes, if you will. And as we do that, certain things that may have been part of our habitual life experience, like judgment and lack of forgiveness and various and sundry of other things that bring us to a place that creates separation in our minds between us and our Father, between us and the Creator, between us and the source of all good. And see, the truth is there cannot be any separation except the separation that we experience within our own minds. It's done unto us as we believe. When we believe that we are immersed in, when we believe that we are infused with, when we believe that we are God expressing as us as individuals and that God is expressing through us in each moment of our life, that every breath that we take is that divine principle. It's working, and it's working for us. That day that was given to us today when we first open our eyes, how awesome of gift that is. And it only gets better from that point on when we know and we declare that for ourselves. So moving forward, we see the answer to every problem is in the problem itself, he says. It usually is so self-evident that its very obviousness conceals itself. Well, how is that? Well, the answer to every problem, as he says, is within the problem. But if we can't see it with our limited thinking, then open our minds up to a greater thinking, a greater understanding. And that's where divine guidance is. You know, and sometimes that means that we're going to have to stop and sit and pause and ponder. Sometimes it means that we don't make a rash decision. Sometimes it means that we reflect on the fact that we do have a bigger God and that we can own that. And in those moments when we pause, when we calm ourselves, oftentimes the one big thing that really kind of gums up the works, if you will, fear, will fade away. As we come into conflict within our life, as we come into obstacles in our life, oftentimes fear is one of the big factors that causes us to make rash or foolish decisions. When we stop and we calm our minds, when we open ourselves up to acceptance and a belief that the inspiration, the guidance is there, we'll find it. And the more that, and truth is, it may be difficult in the beginning, because in the beginning maybe your faith is going to be somewhat small. And you've got to grow your faith through experience, and that's why follow through and action becomes so important. Because if we're not used to doing something, we may not have a belief that it's possible. We may want to have that belief. Intellectually, we may talk about having that belief, but actually having that belief, embodied within ourselves, we may not be there yet, but that's okay. We can get there. There is a road to get there. And we're on that road when we declare our faith. We're on that road. Again, when we start our day declaring that it's going to be a good day, we're on that road when we stop and we pause and we realize that there is a principle for good in the universe that demonstrates and manifests in our life. Not just the world, not everybody else, but in our life. That no matter how difficult things may be in the moment, we're never alone. No matter how worrisome on the surface something may appear, there's a greater good to be found. There's guidance. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to go through various sorts of trials and tribulations. But you know what? it's like if you know that if you know that there is a path through, if you know that you have the energy, if you know that the outcome ultimately is going to be overcoming, transcending whatever it is, it's like it infuses you with an energy to move forward. And you see, that energy comes from the divine principle and the understanding that you have in the knowingness that you have the ability, the guidance, if you will, to overcome. That comes from God. And it's the gift. It's part of the gift that's given to you 24/7. God doesn't go to sleep, doesn't turn the light off. It's always available to us. But we have to avail ourselves to it. So he says, so divine guidance is ours for the asking, and no matter how crude that asking may be or may have been in the history of religious evolution, there has always been an answer. God always answers. Sometimes we don't understand it because we don't understand the proper way of asking, but God always answers. And on that note, we're going to cut away to our second break, and I'll see you when we come back. And God always answers. Don't forget.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Chef Big Will presents the original Bonton Cafe. Stop by 7307 Highway 49 North in Mariposa for the best blackened or southern fried catfish. Go and eat good food and sweet drinks, including but not limited to Cajun and Creole, smoking barbecue, hush puppies, fried pickles, alligator tail, etouffee, prime rib, tri-tip, po' boy sandwiches, crawfish, oysters, fried okra, and so much more. Daily lunch and dinner specials. Sunday brunch from 10 to 2. Enjoy the taste of New Orleans at the original Bonton Cafe. And see their full menu at theoriginalbontoncafe.com.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
Harness the power of the sun and cut your electric bill down to size with Soltech Solar. Call today and request a free quote at 559-325-6907 or visit soltechsolar.com.
Looking for work? Tired of minimum wage? For as low as $200, become certified as a forklift driver at the Certified Forklift Training Center. Call 559-325-8097 or visit cftc.net.
Fresno Dixieland Society presents the Sounds of Mardi Gras, February 7th to the 10th, 2019, at the Doubletree by Hilton. Get your tickets today. For more information, go to FresnoDixie.com or call Linda at 209-534-1924. Again, that's 209-534-1924.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Connect with Dr. Alan Hedberg. Watch Doctor Teach Me to Parent on CentralValleyTalk.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Listen to The Psychology Report anytime at thepsychologyreport.buzzsprout.com. Visit booksbyhedberg.com and order a book for your personal growth. And join the conversation on twitter.com/Alan G. Hedberg.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center. Anyway, we're talking about this idea of divine guidance. And what I said before we went to the break, and I read this to you, I said, so divine guidance is ours for the asking, and no matter how crude the asking may be, or may have been in the history of religious evolution, there has always been an answer. We pick this up here. God has answered every request at the level of the mentality from which the request was made. And I want to flip back here in this book, and there's a section in it where Ernest Holmes talks about or shares with what we call our principles, if you will, in religious science. And one of them is, he says, we believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. God is personal to all who feel his indwelling presence. And that's a feeling that we can all achieve. It's not something that is limited to or unavailable to anyone. It's available to all. And he goes on to say, he says, we believe in the direct revelation of truth through the intuitive and spiritual nature of man, and that any man may become a revealer of truth, and that's with a capital T, who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. In other words, if we make it our purpose to experience our life from a spiritual perspective, in other words, that we don't see the physical world, the material world, as setting the rules for our day-to-day experience, we see our day-to-day experience as an expression of the divine principle that we have the ability to influence and to interact with, then things change for us. And so, moving on here, he says, I don't want to pick this up to the next page. He says, each in his own sphere of action receives as much guidance as he is capable of perceiving. And he uses the masculine pronoun here, but that's only because of the time it was written. For any of us, male or female, we're all children of the divine principle. And we can each receive that. We can each receive it at the level that we're capable of perceiving. So how do we increase our perception, if you will? Is that something that we can do? And yes, we can. We can each and all of us do it. Going back to that concept of belief again, it's done unto us as we believe. So the thing that in order to increase our perception, we increase our belief, we increase our faith. And in doing that, we increase the experience that we have. So what is belief? People think that our beliefs are these things that we have in mind that are basically hardwired into our brain. But the truth is, what you believe today, you didn't believe at one time, and what you're going to believe in the future will be different possibly than what you believe today. And that's because we all change as we learn new things, as we learn to see the world through different eyes, different perspectives. What we once believed, we now don't. There was a time when the world, basically, humanity believed the world was flat. Obviously, that's not so anymore. I just heard something the other day about, or I read it, I don't remember which, but there's evidently a group of people that believe that we never went to the moon, that it was all done, in a theater or in a studio somewhere. And that's their belief. And for someone that holds that belief, the limitations that they experience as a result of that belief, they could, who knows, but when we know that it's done unto us as we believe, and we want to experience a greater relationship with this thing that we call life, this thing that we call God, then we start working on our own beliefs. Well, how do we do that? We do that by making time each and every day to just quiet our minds, to just sit peacefully. The Eastern philosophies, there's whole spiritual philosophies that are built up around the concept of meditation. Meditation is a very powerful tool. We don't have to be super meditators, but it's important that we take time each day and we quiet our mind. And we can learn to quiet our mind. Again, it's a skill. But as we quiet our mind, as we get to a point, we learn to kind of let all the day's worries kind of slip by, right? We can take that time and affirm certain things for us in our life. We don't have to get real crazy. We don't have to try to affirm something that we may never believe in. But to stop and pause, quiet your mind, and affirm that there's one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. And that life is my life now. It's a very simple affirmation, and I utilize this for myself on a regular basis. There's one life, of which all life is a part of. That life is God, and God is perfect, and we are some part of that perfection. Now, there's a great understanding that goes along with that, and we've talked a little bit about it in past shows, and we'll talk about that in future shows. But in this moment, as we're talking about the concept of divine guidance, we can start there. We can affirm that each and every day is a gift. We can affirm that each and every day we realize that God's expressing in our life. In all these things we've talked about, we can affirm these things. But as each of those affirmations become a part of our subjective thinking, a part of our subjective mind, if you will, our life changes. Louise Hayes and other people, but she made the saying popular, was change your thinking, change your life. Change your belief, change your life experience. Okay? And that's something we can each do. And so as we move forward, it starts with a choice. I want to have this experience in my life. If you choose not to, that's where you're at, and that's okay. If you choose to look at this and say, well, it's not for me, that's perfect for you. But if you choose to have a greater, more abundant, more prosperous, more health-filled life experience, and you understand that prosperity, love, abundance, peace, harmony, all come from the primary source of creation, which we call God, then maybe moving forward in this is something that is to be sought out, to be embodied, to be made part of our life experience. So we move forward here in Holmes's essay, and he says, why not then consciously specialize in the law of divine guidance? For surely this would be a practical thing to do, right? We want it, we'll specialize. Again, we're working on affirmations. It is not enough to believe divine guidance can guide. We must know that divine intelligence is guiding. There's a big difference. We must know there are no mistakes in the divine plan, and we must know that we are some part of the universal scheme of things. We must know. It's not enough to just intellectualize. Well, how do we develop knowing? Let's go back to that little affirmation I said. There's one life. That life is God. That life is our life. Or that life is perfect, and that life is our life now. Again, very simple. We begin to embody that. But the thing is, as we begin to embody that affirmation, we develop a knowing, we develop a belief, we develop a faith in God. And we can make a choice to put our expectation on the divine principle with the intention of seeing it demonstrate in our life, and then watching that experience unfold. Oftentimes people get caught up in the law of attraction, or creating abundance in their life or whatever. The divine guidance is so much more expansive, and the expression in our life is so much greater than what we usually think about, that oftentimes this life expression under these conditions becomes it's just an incredible trip, if you will. We begin to realize that we live each second, each moment of our life as God expressing as us. And that's an understanding that becomes part of our beingness. Joel Goldsmith was a New Thought pioneer. He used to say that we learn to practice the presence of God, practicing the presence of God in all that we do, from the time we get up to the time we go to sleep. And it's amazing, even through our sleeping hours, once we begin to align ourselves with these principles, how this unfolds. And how this unfolds in our physical life expression is through divine guidance, is through the gift that is given. We talk about, God gives the gift continuously, but we can only receive what it is that we believe in. One of the metaphors that Holmes uses is like a person going out with a thimble to collect good. Well, if you have a thimble full of expectation, you're going to get a thimble full of good. But you know, you could have just as easily taken a cup out. Take a cup out. Get a cup full. Well, if you can take a cup out, why not a bucket? In other words, the good that's available to us comes from an unlimited source. Our receptivity to it comes from ourselves. So it's done unto us as we believe. Let's take a bigger cup out than the cup we've been taking. Let's believe a little bit more. Let's see and have an expectation of having God express more in our lives and see how that unfolds. And so as we do, according to our theory, it is not enough to merely know this, for while we understand the law is mind in action, and that it is a universal law of cause and effect, and we've been talking about that, right? He says we know that there is this same law working for us, and it is inhibited or accelerated in its actions through our faith and acceptance of it. Indeed, this is one of the secrets of this science, and it really is no secret at all, for the experience has taught us that this is true of every law of nature. We must understand a law before we can make conscious use of it. We talked about that with flying. In other words, nature, when we learn to work with nature, when we learn to understand nature or God, then it will work for us. We can put these principles into practice. We're going to take our next break, and I'll see you when we come back.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. And I want to say hi to Nancy and Gordon, and I want to say hi to the, was it the Quakertown Center for Spiritual Living, and thank them for sharing this today, and all the others of you that are with us out there. You know, it's great to be able to interact with you, and I appreciate when you comment on the show as we go through. Anyway, picking it up here, I want to read. It says, whenever a problem confronts us, take it into the silence of your own contemplation and declare that there is no problem, that you already know the answer. As we begin to learn to quiet our mind, as we begin to understand that there's a direct relationship between us and divine principle with God, that when we speak our word, as we say, in other words, when we're at that point of declaring the good in our life that we know is there on the spiritual plane, but we're not seeing it in the physical plane. But we claim ownership of it, if you will. We make a declaration. that it's done unto us as we believe, and our Father answers before we even speak the words of our prayer. And this is what Ernest Holmes is talking about. And so as we seek divine guidance, we can declare that divine guidance is ours and open ourselves to it. We go in that secret place of the Most High, which is quieting our mind, going into a meditative state, if you will. And he says here, moving forward, he says, dissolve the belief in the problem and announce the belief in the answer. Mentally act as though the problem were an argument trying to convince you that you do not know the answer. And then, through the conscious activity of your thought, destroy that argument, either by picking it apart, bit by bit at a time, until there's nothing left, or by a complete realization that dissipates it in the sun as the sun dissipates the mist. In other words, if we're dealing with a problem, right, and we're intentionally seeking divine guidance, and we pause and we reflect and we make a declaration. But in that declaration, we recognize that the problem that we're seeking to see dissolved, if you will, or dissipated in our life has to go up against a bigger God. See, this is where understanding that we have a bigger God than any problem can make that instantaneous realization for some of us happen at that moment. I have a bigger God than this problem. For some of us, we may have to, as Holmes says, we may have to kind of work our way through it almost like an attorney, laying out our case before our own mind, if you will. But our case is, in that laying it out, we're laying it out from a knowing of truth. And the truth is, we have a bigger God. Okay? And how do we get to that? Well, it may take a few steps in our mind, but that's something we can do. We're surrounded by and immersed in divine wisdom. It's not way out there. It's not far away, and it exists within us when we seek the answer. And that's what we do through this thing we call affirmative prayer. We can do it in meditation, but we can do it in the moment as we're dealing with something. So he says, moving forward, he says, when you dissolve the problem within your mind and seek guidance, you are announcing that there is no problem. You are announcing. How can we announce that there's no problem? When we see the problem right before us, or we're faced with the problem, how can we make that announcement? But we can. And to the degree that we can believe in that announcement, to that degree it will be done unto us. And that's how we have to look at life in order to put ourselves in perspective with the truth of who we are. Until mankind believed that they could fly, flight was just an impossibility. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci talked about flying. Nobody flew for quite a while after Leonardo made his transition to a different expression. But yet flight was always available to humanity. No one believed that we could go to the moon until John Kennedy said, we're going to go to the moon, and then put people to work just to see to it that happened. He had a dream, and his dream was that we can do this. And we can have that same attitude in our own life, that we can, as we see our dreams unfold in our mind, in our heart, that we can know that those dreams are based in a desire that exists within us, and there is a power and a truth behind those dreams that can make it manifest into our life experience at the level that we believe. And so this is where belief becomes very important. But as we believe in divine guidance unfolds in our lives. And so he says, we dissolve that problem, okay? And we announce that there is a complete answer, and that this answer is made known to your mind, to our mind, in that process. Right now, today, it will unfold, or in the moment, as necessary. And he says, in this way, you wait upon your indwelling Lord. You wait upon that divine wisdom that exists within you. You wait upon God itself, and you wait upon that within yourself. What a concept. That I can sit within my own place, my own space. I can quiet my mind. I can declare that my problem is only as big as I'm willing to accept it is. But if I can accept that I have a bigger God than any problem, then the answer already exists. God knows the answer. The answer will unfold, and I can make that declaration. And as I believe it's done unto me, as I can see it in my imagination. Now, when I talk about seeing it in the imagination, truth be told, some of us don't see in images in the imagination. Some of us do. but we can see in a feeling sort of way. And that's really what we're seeking to attempt. When we state that something is whole, perfect, and complete, when we state that our problem is dissolved, we're not just speaking words, we're not just intellectualizing. We're bringing our mind, our imagination, into an experiential place of understanding and feeling that it is already done. It is so. We have transcended. We have overcome. And how does that feel? How does it feel to be on the other side of that? Because when you can embody that feeling, when you can embody that within your imagination, you have spoken. The law that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we spent a couple of weeks talking about the law. The law goes, it takes effect. The law responds, and it always responds. And it responds most significantly to our feeling. And if we begin to feel that it's done, we feel that it's accomplished, we feel that it is, it will unfold in our life. That's why as we go through the 5 steps we talk about of affirmative prayer treatment, the recognition of the infiniteness of God, the recognition that there's a unification, we are one, and God expressing that there is no separation. And as we make our declaration, which is the third part of the treatment, we come to the 4th part. And that's the gratitude part, the thanksgiving part. And oftentimes when I'm working with students that I'm teaching, we're talking about this. And I want to share this with you because I think this is vitally important. When we get to the point of thanksgiving, it's not about saying, thank you. It's not about saying, thank you, God. It's not about saying, I am grateful. It's about experiencing thanksgiving and experiencing gratitude. Because in truth, we can't experience gratitude and we can't experience thanksgiving for something that doesn't exist. And it's kind of a fine point, but if you can get it in your mind that you are thankful and you experience thanksgiving for what it is that you have just declared in your prayer, then you have accepted that it is already so. Because in truth, that's what thanksgiving declares. It declares that it's already so, and I'm thankful for it. You cannot be thankful for something that you don't have in front of you. Now, you can be thankful that maybe it's coming. You can be thankful that you're in the right mindset, but you can't be thankful for it unless you have a belief that it already is. And that's the power of thanksgiving, the power of gratitude. So as we go through our meditations, we go through our prayer work, being grateful, being thankful in the moment for what is, it makes that connection solid. And then the 5th step is we release, we let it go, we give it up to God. If it already is, and I've recognized that in Thanksgiving, then it's in God's reality, it's in God's experience, and God will demonstrate in my life because it already is so. And so it is as we finish off our prayer treatment. So it is. Not so it will be, not so we're looking for, not so we're hoping for, but so it is. It already is. And my friends, in your life, every moment of every day, it is. Every moment of every day, you are surrounded by divine intelligence. You are lifted with the light of life within you that cannot be extinguished. We may pass from this physical plane. The body may pass away, but that light is infinite. That light is life. There's one life. That life is God. That life is our life now. And so we have, when we talk about seeking divine guidance, it's not a philosophical concept. It's not an idea, a wish that, boy, I would really like to have it. It is something that we have a very real expectation to experience divine guidance personally in our life. And that's the concept I want to share with you today, that divine guidance is here and now, available to us. To the degree that we believe, to the degree that we're receptive to it, to the degree that we open ourselves up to the believing of it, it will be done unto us. We can take our thimble out and get a thimble full of guidance, or we can grab a cup or a bucket or whatever. It's there in its infiniteness, available to each and every one of us. And the amazing thing is, it is available to each and every one of us, and we could all go out at the same time. and you'll never wear it out. You'll never run out. It's divine love. It's the infinite giving of God to each and every one of us. We were created in the image and likeness of the divine. In other words, in the nature of God, which means on a spiritual level that we are kind of, if you can imagine being kind of God in the micro version of God in the macro, the big version. But we're there. We are connected. We are consciousness. We are spirit. And we are powerful beyond most of our understanding. And so at that time when Jesus walked the face of the earth and he said, all that I can do, you can do, and more, people oftentimes think that that's just a direction that he gave to his disciples. But we know historically that beyond his disciples, other believers, other followers were able to do what he did and more. It was only when humanity began to look at that and think that maybe that was the opposing force, if you will, that they begin to denigrate it and say, no, only Jesus really was able to do that. But historically, we know there were other people. And then it kind of went away. But, it has existed in the background in the history of humanity. And if you seek it out, you can find it. There are healers that some of them were noteworthy, and there's healers that we'll never know about. But they existed, and in many different ways they changed the world. There are places in the world where people go to be healed because there's a healing essence there, if you will. Well, if you go believing, and you go to that place, and you believe that you will be healed, all that I do, you can do, and that much more. And it's done unto you as you believe. Think about that as you go through your week. Think about that as you start your day. It's done unto you as you believe. Did you wake up this morning and believe that the day was going to be tough? Or did you wake up this morning believing that the day was a gift of God for you to experience and express your life and to express it more abundantly today than you ever have, no matter what's on that list to do today? It's your day. It's your day to shine. It's your day to express God. It's your day to experience more love, more abundance, and more goodness. And that's all we got time for this week. I'll see you when we come back. Know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. Because truly, wherever you are, God is there. All is well. Have a great week, my friends. I'll see you when we come back.
CentralValleyTalk.com